History as a science is somewhat similar to forensics. Both solve mysteries. But unlike crime, the riddles of history have affected the lives of millions, perhaps billions of people. It is a mistake to think that solving historical mysteries is a purely symbolic process. It can do a lot of good. For example, if we ever find out what caused the tectonic plates to form on Earth, we may learn to predict earthquakes and save the lives of tens of millions of people. This is just one example, and we will talk about the main mysteries in history in the next couple of minutes. Starting with the moon, I would like to say that the more you read books and scientific articles about the moon, the more you start to believe in magic. If the moon were bigger, the Earth would have a more stable climate, and humans might not have appeared. If the moon were smaller, the climate would be stormy, and who knows if such complex organisms would have evolved on our planet. The visible size of the moon in the sky is equal to the visible size of the sun. That's since antiquity noticed and people begin to believe in gods and religions. On the other hand, all the first calendars were lunar. And who knows how far we would have progressed in science without such a convenient body in the sky for calculations and observations. But where did the moon, so amazing and useful to mankind, come from? For the vast majority of history, mankind believed that the appearance of the moon was the creation of the gods. Later, with the development of science came the theories that go by the unofficial name, the Big Three. The centrifugal capture theory. This first theory was proposed by George Darwin, son of the legendary Charles. In his view, the young Earth, formed from a protoplanetary disk, rotated very quickly. As a consequence, the centrifugal effect seemed to pull it along the equator, and a large chunk of it broke off. Darwin also believed that the Pacific Ocean was where the moon had been. The second theory suggests that our planet and the moon formed together from a single protoplanetary disk. But the third theory believes that the moon formed as an independent planet, and the Earth simply took it over as a more solid planet. Each theory has its pros and cons. In Mali, for example, lives the people of Dagon. In the oldest legends, they claim that once in the sky appeared the moon. Until then, it was as if there was no moon. In the 20th century, people flew to the moon from there brought to Earth 46 feet of lunar soil. This soil turned out to be similar to Earth's. Only very strange, the samples dated back almost 4.5 billion years. Also, with the advent of advanced equipment, the ratios of stable oxygen isotopes on the moon and Earth were calculated. While meteorites and other celestial bodies in this indicator usually differ. In general, it became clear to scientists that at least formed the moon and Earth from the same substance that in 1975 formed a new collision theory. It states that almost immediately after the formation of the Earth, another protoplanet Theia crashed into the planet. It was the size of Mars, and collisions of this magnitude ripped away some of the matter from the Earth from which the moon formed. In short, the theory explains everything from the main point about the Earth and the moon to why the moon is mostly made up of something similar to the composition of the Earth's mantle. In 50 years, no one has been able to disprove the theory, only managed to clarify the details. Just 10 years ago, scientists believed that the process of formation of the moon after the collision of the Earth and Theia lasted hundreds of thousands of years. Supercomputers came on the scene. Simulations became more and more detailed every year. A couple of years ago, the Cosmos supercomputer took over. It ran hundreds of simulations of collisions between Earth and Theia, and the most realistic suddenly turned out to be a simulation in which the moon is formed literally in a couple of hours. At the moment, it is the best available theory. But who knows what will happen in the future? Mankind has no idea what was relatively in the not-too-distant past. The hieroglyphs of ancient Egypt are not deciphered very well, and the written language of ancient civilizations has been lost. Actually, when this very writing appeared, this is another mystery, the solution of which may change the course of our history. Technically, it is not excluded that 10,000 years before ancient Rome, on a planet there were civilizations approximately the same level. But we cannot find out about it because not only to decipher, but even find samples of writing, we do not have the opportunity. At the moment, the oldest sample of writing is Sumerian. In Mesopotamia, found records of 5 or 5,500 years old. It is also believed that a little later in ancient Egypt, China and America independently invented their own writing systems. But it's all conjecture. It is accurate to say that the date of the invention of writing is constantly shifting back in time. Proto-Elamite tablets found in southern Iran, they were written somewhere around 3200 BC or maybe earlier. It's not to say that anyone was practicing writing phrases on them. On the contrary, the tablets are more than 1,500 years old, and it is more like a large collection of writings. Consequently, these already developed letters, albeit in a strange form, have survived to this day. It is not excluded that these samples are already improved inscriptions of even more distant past, and scientists just cannot find it. A similar situation with the tablet from Kish. It has signs that we consider primitive, but they were written in 3500 BC. Unfortunately, mankind has only one tablet at its disposal. According to the researchers, it's some kind of economic record. Writing was already in use, which means it was invented even earlier. Unfortunately, there are no exact dates for the deciphering. The second fact is especially upsetting. In the records of Sumerians and other civilizations which we managed to read, mention other even more ancient civilizations which even for the Sumerians who lived 5,000 years ago were as old as the Sumerians are now for us. Who knows, maybe they got to the nuclear weapons and then arranged the apocalypse which rolled mankind back to the Stone Age. With this is related to the third and one of the main mysteries of history. When in general people founded this very first civilization, well, or at least an entity that can be called a country. It is traditionally believed that for most of history, humans were swinging hunters-gatherers. About 11,000 years ago, mankind mastered agriculture. Consequently, it finally had the opportunity to establish itself in one place. So appeared the first permanent villages, which would later grow into cities, countries, and then into huge empires about which we told the past video. The only trouble is that the oldest known at these moments is the Akkadian Empire. It was in the 3rd millennium BC. And according to legends, King Sargon conquered first Mesopotamia and then spread his influence to the east, conquering Turkey and Syria. The trouble is that even these legends do not speak about the construction of cities, but about the conquest of existing settlements and entire countries. So there were states before Sargon? For example, ancient Egypt, whose history goes back even further, or the Sumerians, who had a written language in the 4th millennium BC, or the Indians, who generally claim to have settled the Indus River in the 5th millennium, are all quite advanced cities. In short, no matter how much we look into who was first, a serious argument and evidence is unlikely to go deeper than the 5th millennium BC, but there's a problem. Agriculture was adopted earlier and they started to establish themselves in cities. But where did the millennia of history go? We would like to say that the first sedentary people were primitive, could not write, and survived on a diet of millet, living in tents. But unfortunately, that's not quite true. To see for yourself, visit Göbekli Tepe in southern Turkey. This is a huge temple complex. The construction of the oldest layer, which is dated by radiocarbon analysis, is 10 millennia BC. There you will find huge 55-ton columns, regular-shaped circles, and very advanced drawings. Such an engineering structure physically could not have been made by nomadic hunters and gatherers. The construction required hundreds of people who must be fed and housed somewhere. As a consequence, many historians began to slowly shift the dates of events when people began to establish themselves in cities. Instead of 9 or 10,000 years, they are already talking about 12 or 30,000 years. And it is not a fact that Göbekli Tepe is the oldest example of human engineering skill. For the title of the oldest city on the planet compete Israeli Jericho, which is about 12,000 years old, Turkish Çatalhöyük, which is about 10,000 years old. But when exactly people established themselves in cities and where the first state appeared? This is a mystery that has yet to be solved. But the most interesting is the Nazca Desert. It is located in the south of Peru, where archaeologist Paul Kosak, flying in 1926 on an airplane with a surprise for himself, noticed the huge drawings of spider, condor, lizard, and other animals. Their study showed that they were drawn by the Nazca people who lived here about 1,500 years ago. executed line by excavation, furrows on a meter wide and about half a meter deep. In fact, they are not deep trenches, but they are surprisingly even. And the main thing, these drawings are visible only from a bird's eye view. They were preserved thanks to the desert climate. Rain in the region go on average half an hour a year, and heating helps the lines do not suffer from sandstorms. The meter-long drawings remain untouched. Why did the inhabitants of such a deep past need such symbols? There is still no answer. The theory of the observatory states that the lines are somehow related to the state of the moon and point to it. But of course, there is also the assumption of signs for aliens. They are, however, meaningless because the drawings are small, they cannot be seen from space. Consequently, they were created to solve earthly problems. Finding out in which ones, even despite the antiquity of the discovery, we can get precious scientific data. Who knows what our ancestors could have thought of without computers and artificial intelligence? Everything we use now, from refrigerators to smartphones, are technologies predicted and described in the past. We have simply improved them, and it is possible that somewhere in the diggings lie fresh ideas that will help scientists create something interesting. So hopefully the list of history's mysteries will shrink in the coming years. And that's all for now. If you have watched till now, please support us by subscribing and liking. It motivates us to create new content and improve its quality. Thanks for watching. See you soon, our historians.